Well, here we have the trig function cosine of 2x plus sine of x, and we're going to be finding minimum and maximum values. Quite often with trig functions, I like to go ahead and graph it and see how many I'm looking for. So there's the function. The window, I've got it going from 0 to 2 pi on the x-axis, just like that says. And the y goes from -3 to 3. And then take a look at the graph. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 places where there's minimums and maximums. So we need to take the derivative and find 4 solutions. So the derivative of cosine, that's negative sine of 2x. And then we need to do the chain rule. The derivative of 2x is a 2, so multiply by 2. And the derivative of sine is cosine. When you're solving trig equations, you need the arguments to be the same. So this has a 2x and I want it to just be x. So that means that I get to use a trig identity. So for sine of 2x, you can replace that with 2 times sine of x times cosine of x. And then don't forget about the negative and the 2. And then just recopy this cosine right here. Then we can take the derivative and set it equal to 0. And this has a cosine, this has a cosine, so I'm going to factor out cosine of x. And then this will be -4 times sine. And then when you factor out this cosine, it leaves behind a +1. Now that it's factored, set each factor equal to 0. So when does cosine of x equal 0? And how about -4 sine of x plus 1? When does that equal 0? Usually you're also supposed to find out where the derivative is undefined, but there's no place where sine and cosine are undefined, so that doesn't apply in this particular problem. And with this one, I could subtract 1 from both sides. It would become a -1 on the right side, and then divide by -4. The two negatives will cancel, and what's going to be left is sine equals 1/4. So with that one, if you take a look at just the basic sine graph, 1/4 would be approximately right here. And if you draw a line straight across, you'll see there's going to be 2 solutions. One of them is very small, close to the origin, and the other one is very close to pi, because right here on the x-axis, that would be pi. So this answer is going to be just to the left of pi. To find the answer that's closest to the origin, then use sine inverse. So this says use radians. This says we're using radians, so we're set to go. Sine inverse of 1/4 is equal to 0.253. Now I'm pretty sure that's not pi over 12 or pi over 3 or something, but just to confirm, divide it by pi. And when I tell the calculator to change it to a fraction, if it can't find a fraction, it's just going to spit out a decimal. So that decimal right there does us no good. That's not a fraction. So we're just going to have to use the answer, 0.253. So x is equal to a 0.253. So that's this first solution right here. And then this one is to the left of pi, so it's going to be at pi minus 0.253. Pi minus 0.253 is x equals 2.889. So far, we have 2 out of the 4 critical values. And for this one, I don't even need to use a calculator because the graph of cosine looks like this from 0 to 2 pi. and then it equals 0 right here and right here. And this one is at pi over 2. This one is at 3 pi over 2. So we now have the 4 critical values. Now we could use the calculator and do 2 things at once. Check these answers and find the actual minimum and maximum. So if you go back to the graph and then use trace, let's see, this one would be the smallest one, so that should be that point right there. Trace 0.253, that one is correct, and that's a maximum value. So I will label my answers over here. Maximum value at 0.253, comma 1.125. Then let's try for that one right there. So I believe that's going to be pi over 2. Pi divided by 2, so that's a minimum value. So that's at 1.571 comma 0. And let's see, I believe this one will be next. Not that you have to go in order, I'm just trying to go in order. So that's a maximum value. X is 2.889 and the Y value is 1.125. And then finally it should be this 3 pi over 2. So 3 pi divided by 2, yes, that's correct, and that's a minimum value. So in decimal form, 4.712, comma, the Y value is -2. So for that interval, those are the minimums and the maximums.